Hi, this is Todd Fields, and I want to welcome you to the Worship Circle podcast, the video version on our YouTube channel. As a ministry, we exist to let worship leaders around the world know that they're loved and not alone. If you're a worship leader, you know what it's like to pour out to people, to serve people week after week. And rarely do we take the time to pause and go on a journey to allow anyone to pour into us, to care for our soul, to be loved by brothers and sisters around us. And that's what we do. Our purpose is that you would know that you're loved and that you're not alone. We have mentors waiting for you to apply to their small group, and you can do that by going to worshipcircle.com/apply. And we are standing by to review your application, to help you with scholarships if that's what you need. And we can't wait to meet you. But for now, we hope you enjoy this podcast. Well, hey friends, welcome to the Worship Circle podcast. I'm so excited to have my friend and sister and co-Worship Circle leader, Meredith Andrews Sooter, with me now. Thanks, Meredith, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This is your second time on.
Thanks for coming to my house.
Oh, I know. This is amazing. Here in the middle of summer.
Yep.
In the midst of COVID.
Right.
I mean, when everybody I'm talking to, we hit on that briefly. We don't want to stay too long because we could probably be here for the entire.
Right, but I mean, we can't live in denial either. That's where the world is.
What's it been like for the Sooter home?
Oh man,
and for you?
Well, I mean, we're 3 months into this.
Yeah.
It's been an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And I think an adjustment for everyone, and I think everybody's just had to kind of just recalibrate and go, all right, how do we do this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to call it new normal because I don't accept that. but I think we've all just had to kind of gauge, all right, well, how do we navigate what this looks like and do what we need to do for our families? And what's so beautiful about it to me is like, I've gotten to know my neighbors like I'd never had before. We'd see each other and we'd wave, but my next door neighbors have been coming over every now and again, or there's a family down the street we've gotten to know and they've brought their little boy over to play, just things like that, that I think when we look for it, we can actually find so much beauty in this of what feels like everything coming to a screeching halt. And, but I think just the different pace and rhythm, we've all had to, again, kind of recalibrate to. But when we just lean in and go, all right, let's find the good in this and let's pay attention to what God wants to say in the middle of this reset.
Yeah.
And I think he's saying a lot. So all in all, it's been good for us. It's been challenging. It's been hard. There have been great days. There have been days where I'm like, I just want to go to bed and start over again tomorrow. So I think in reality, it's just, again, going like, Lord, what do you want to say to us in this? What are you doing in our family in this? I'm thankful for the extra time that I've had with my kids. And, funny enough, now actually wanting to homeschool, because I've enjoyed having them around so much. So we'll see. It's been good.
So road life is just for everybody come to a screeching halt.
Yep.
So that whole idea is just on hold for everyone, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have stuff on the calendar for September and October, but who's to say that that's actually going to be reality? We'll just have to wait and see.
You can go if you wear 5 masks at one time.
Oh, gracious. I can't sing one. I can't even, that's a whole nother conversation, but I definitely can't sing in a mask. So we'll just have to see.
Well, that's now. Let's back up a little bit. I just am honored to be your friend and your brother. And it's crazy. I was thinking about this on the way over here because we're in Nashville and seeing some friends. And the first time I ever heard your music, a friend of mine, Matt Williams, was doing some stuff with our church, put this CD in. He goes, "You got to hear Meredith." And I heard you sing and what God was doing through you. And it was just, I was like, oh my gosh. And now, fast forward to this worship circle thing, we're all connected in, and it's like, it's just, I guess the body of Christ and the family of Jesus is so fun. Especially the older you get and the memories you have, you're like, wait a minute.
Right.
Then I met you and Jacob in like the green room at Willow Creek one time. And
that's right.
Fast forward.
Wow.
It's just nuts how it's all connected. And maybe the older we get, and as we get closer to seeing things as they truly are, it's just going to be for eternity like that, more of friendship and family. But just thank you. It's just crazy that you're part of the Worship Circle team, and thank you for all you've done before we get into the details of all of it.
I'm honored. You know that.
Yeah.
I mean, Worship Circle is probably my favorite thing that I get to do outside of my home because it feels so intentional and significant and like truly investing in people's lives, not just showing up, leading worship for a night, having a couple 5-minute conversations and then leaving. This is more long-term and getting to know these girls and walking with them. And oh man, it's just been so life-giving for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I told you in January, I was about ready to quit everything else except for Worship Circle. But I said, thank you for asking me to be a part. I mean, because I felt very, and still do many times, still feel very like ill-equipped. Like, what do I have that they want to learn from me? But I think it's just sharing experiences and relating to one another and just having conversations about what we're going through and asking God to inform all of that and give us his perspective and teach us how to love people well in the place where he's called us. And it's just really beautiful to see all these girls that I've had the privilege of walking alongside doing just that.
Yeah. I know you talk a lot in Worship Circle, and just from the times you've taught with us about this idea of us all being in process.
Yeah.
And I think for the leaders watching, we're on stage week in and week out. We're serving in a church, and with COVID, we're on video, but that's a little bit different. But we all are kind of wondering, when is that moment for me going to be, God? Like, do you see me? Do you hear me? Is anybody else going to, it's like when you're a kid and there's a game and you're going, am I going to get picked? And I just want you to talk a little bit about your journey in that, because I know I was listening to some of your music just to refresh myself, because you started like 13 or something years ago with your first project, and I'm listening to these songs and in that process and the themes of different albums and stuff for you. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for you, just to talk to some of the leaders listening who might say, does God see me? Does my voice matter? Am I going to be chosen? Kind of thing. And when you started out, what was your big, your hope? And then fast forward to now, and that's a lot. We could sit here all day, but what are some of the things that you remember and the things along the way that God's given you peace about?
Right. Well, even just thinking about the people who are in that spot of just kind of going, God, do you see me? And God, will you use me?
Yeah.
I mean, that was always like growing up. I said that so many times to the Lord, like, God, I just want you to use me. I just want you to use my life. I just want to I want to honor you with whatever you've given me, And I know that place so well. And I find myself in it over and over again. Different, it looks different, it's maybe different levels or whatever, but I found myself there continually. And I think God brings me back to that place because it will look different often than what we think that it will. And I mean, I could go back to when I was probably 12 and had started writing songs and recorded them on a tape deck and typed all the lyrics and sent them off to DC to the copyright office because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Did you do the cassette and the envelope thing?
Yes.
I'm going to copyright my song.
Yes. I mean, but I did send it to the copyright office and they sent it back with like a stamp on, and I'm like, and then I hold that envelope with the stamp and I'm like, well, now what,
It's yours.
Right. Okay, great.
You own the song.
Yeah. And then even listening to so much Christian music growing up. And
who were some of your influences?
Oh, man. Rebecca St. James, Krista Lewis, Point of Grace, Darlene Check, Matt Redman, Delirious, Rita Springer,
Yeah.
all the Vineyard worship people.
Yeah.
But I loved CCM and I loved worship. But I loved the worship that was, I mean, back in those days, it was very organic and it was like a verse and a chorus a lot of times. You know, it wasn't as structured as it is today. But I mean, I feel like maybe Darlene and Hillsong, they kind of paved that way a little bit. But I would geek out over all those records and read all the lyrics and who wrote the songs and who produced and who played drums and whatever, you know, and drafted a letter to send to a record label and never sent it and, you know, whatever. But it's funny how God just brings those things back around. And I didn't know. I've told the story so many times, and I think I did on the last podcast we did, but when I was 17, I went to a Rex St. James show and just felt so compelled by what she was doing. Like I felt like I was gonna combust, you know, like, and I was like, God, I want to do something like this. I feel like I'm on fire right now. And just went down to the front, laid it down and said, God, I don't know what this is about, but if you want to use this gift on my life, it's yours. And I don't want to make this about me, and I don't want to do anything you haven't asked me to do. And that night I felt like God said to me so clearly, Todd, Meredith, be faithful where I've placed you. And that's just been that laid the foundation.
You're
for
getting
learning.
emotional.
I'm sorry, I'm getting so emotional.
No,
but
it's good because there's something there. Like it's I've told this story probably 1,000 times. No, but that's the wellspring from where this whole thing originated for you, and God met you there.
Yes.
So that's evidence that you're tender and
100%. And he always brings me back to that point.
Yeah.
Like I remember probably 2 years ago or so. So when I was 6 years old, that was the first time I ever sang in church, and it was "I Love You, Lord."
Yeah.
Which is very significant to me. Yeah. Just the simplicity of that song. It's just saying, Lord, let it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. That's the goal.
Yep. Just
to please you, nothing else. And then fast forward 2 years ago, it was probably like 35. And I ended up going into "I Love You, Lord" at the end of a song in a worship set at church. And I could not make it through. I was like, you know, when you can't sing and cry at the same time, not like really cry. So, but it was just the sweetest moment. And I felt like God was saying, I'm just going to bring you back to that. That's where we started. That's the heart that I gave you. And that's what this is about, you know? And, so all that to say, just like the process, the journey, it's not, you know, we live in such an interesting world where all our highlights and accomplishments are displayed. But Jesus didn't live his life that way. Yeah. And the older I get, the more I just want to run away from social media and just be like, how do I live like Jesus? Because the culture says one thing, the culture says hustle, and the culture says make it happen. But, you know, Jesus says the complete opposite. So he's, you know, he had 12 disciples and anyway, sorry, my 5-year-old's about to walk in the door.
I think she should.
This was going to happen.
No, this will be awesome. If Frankie doesn't.
This is probably the second podcast she's interrupted that was on video. So,
it's okay.
But it turned out okay.
Hey, Frankie.
Hey, babe. How's it going?
Guys, we're keeping this rolling because this is life and this is worship.
Yeah, Frankie.
Hey, Frankie.
Yesterday we went on a little girls trip to the makeup store, and I let her pick out some lipstick. That's where her lips were so big.
You look pretty.
What do you say?
Got a princess dress on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you all good? What is it? I know. I figured that would happen at some point.
Mom.
Yes.
You put stuff on my toe.
Well, I did put some lavender on your Band-Aid.
Well, it's making this come off.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you think about worship? What does worship mean? Do you know?
Yeah.
Because I hear you singing sometimes and making up songs
Yeah.
Don't talk about
Do you make up your own songs, Frankie?
Sometimes.
Man, that's really cool.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I'm gonna hang out with Mr. Todd and do this interview because there's a camera right there, and we're trying to like catch it on camera.
I can't see it.
You can't see it.
Right here.
Can you go back inside and just play for a little bit until we're done? Is that okay?
No.
Can you do that?
We want to take a nap right here.
No, I don't think you need to take a nap right here. Do you want to go turn on Peppa Pig?
Ooh.
You can go watch Peppa Pig for a little bit. Go turn on Peppa Pig first, and then we'll see after this, okay?
Okay.
All right. Tell Peppa I said hey.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Bye, Frankie.
See you, Franks. Love you.
Oh, my gosh.
Real life.
Totally. Keep it rolling.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, I think when we're talking about process,
Yeah.
I mean, even for me, like as a mom, how much God has used my kids to bring it back to like what really matters. And, you know, I remember when I had my first son, Maverick. So he's almost 10. We were in Chicago. We were working at a church, so we lived there.
Yeah.
He was probably 8 or 9 months old, and it was the day of the Dove Awards. And I had been nominated for 2,
Okay.
but it was also the Wednesday before Easter. And when you work at a church, you don't go anywhere Easter week. So I was like, sorry, guys, going to have to miss this one, you know, because we had rehearsal that night for Good Friday services.
Oh, wow.
So that day, I was kind of sad that I couldn't be there.
Yeah.
And I put Maverick down for a nap, and I was sitting on the couch, and I was literally on YouTube watching all these female worship leaders do their thing and like weeping because I'm like, Jesus, am I ever going to get, you know? And at that time, you know, I had put out probably 2 records with Word, and I was leading worship, but felt like it was almost like an Abraham Isaac moment of God just saying, are you going to give this to me again? Because I tend to just take it back and be like, oh, I got it now. I see this, how this is going. I'm just going to run with it. Right. But that day it was almost like God was like, are you going to hand this to me? Or are you going to try to like make it what you think it should be? And so I had to get to the place where I just said, Lord, if you want me to lay it all down, lead worship at a church and be a mom, like, that's a high calling, and I can't ask for anything else. Yeah. And I mean, I was sobbing on my couch, just having this moment with God. And that was the day that I won 2 Dove Awards. And I just think it's really funny.
And you weren't even there?
I wasn't even there.
Oh, God.
And granted, I don't think I should have won those Dove Awards, and that's not me being, it's a whole nother thing. I think it was the Lord saying, like my friend called me, I'm feeding Maverick dinner before we go to rehearsal. Yeah. She's like, Mary, you just won a Dove Award. Like she's in the auditorium. And I was like, what? Like how? It tied for with Chris Tomlin, for our God. And I'm like, what universe is this, you know? And then called me back 5 minutes later. You just won another one for
no way.
And the song that won was How Great Is the Love, which we wrote with Paul, just another worship circle connection. Jacob and I wrote with Paul. But I always say when I tell that story, like Dove Awards, I could take them or leave them. Like I never signed up for this because I wanted that. But that day when I just came to this place of God, I lay it at your feet again. It was never mine anyways. Yeah. And he's like, yep, great. That's where we're at. That's what I wanted from you more than anything. And he's like, and I'm not finished with you. And I'll give you 2 gold birds to prove it.
2 gold birds.
So it's pretty cool how God will just like meet you in that when you think that you have to when you lay it down, when you surrender it, when you lay down your ideas and your ideals, and you just go, God, I'm just going to put this on the altar because everything I have, you gave me anyway. Yeah. And I don't want to try to manipulate this or make it something that you didn't intend for it to be. And so here it is again. And then watch what he does, how he multiplies it, how he brings it back around. And maybe not in a way that you anticipated, and maybe it is, but there's something to be said about just keeping the posture of your heart as surrender and just open-handedness, if you will.
Yeah.
You know?
I can remember going to relatives' homes when I was growing up because I was singing and playing. Mm-hmm. Hey, Todd, you're going to make it one day, and you need to get on Star Search. And like that, the older generation was like,
Star Search.
if you're going to be a musician, you got to be on TV.
Right.
So I think even in starting to lead worship in college and stuff, there was this thing of, man, I got to make it. Mm-hmm. Like I got to prove to everybody that I am somebody, and that this is, and it's crazy because I lived with that, not to tell my story on your podcast, but I lived with that all the way up until like 40, still trying to go, well, I want to be an artist and write and do that thing. And God's like, Todd, you can write songs. I'm going to use some of the songs, but I've got another lane for you. And, you know, now we're 6 years into Worship Circle. We've mentored over 600 leaders. And I'm like, I wouldn't trade that for anything that I thought I wanted, you know?
Yeah.
And even with what you're saying, Meredith, it's like oftentimes for everybody watching, we have this idea of what we think is best for our life. And it really seems like it comes down to just the simplicity, but also the hard part of following Jesus.
Yeah.
Like he's just saying, follow me. Mm-hmm. And it's not always going to be toward the social media blow up and the big platform and the whole thing.
Yeah. He never said, follow me and all your dreams will come true.
Yeah.
He said, die to yourself.
Well,
but there's so much joy in that.
Yeah. And it's funny because everybody that was close to him died. Like
exactly.
Disciples.
But they would, I mean, if you had a conversation with them, they would be like, it was worth every second. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah.
And I just know, like, even with kind of having there's nothing wrong with having dreams or goals. I believe that God actually births those and stirs those up in our hearts. And they're from him. But I think it's just being willing to continually keep that dream on the altar and let God shape it and mold it in the way that he wants to, and shape and mold us. Because I've said this so many times, and I know other people say this as well, but like, I think the greatest tragedy would be that I realize all of my dreams and everything that I'd hoped for happens, and yet I'm not the person that God has intended for me to be, or it all comes crashing down because I have not built a foundation that's able to sustain any level of success, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's the same as like what scripture says, like you can gain the whole world and lose your soul, forfeit your soul.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing I want to do. Yeah. So I think it's like pulling back and going, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. What is it that you envision for my life? Because I want it to be about the kingdom. I want it to be about your agenda, not mine. And when we allow God just to sanctify us and refine us and just deepen us, send our roots down deeper into who he is, so that we're anchored in the solid foundation of his word and his presence and his heart, what he's like, his nature. Because when we get a glimpse of that, we're no longer seeing stars in our eyes, you know, in the realm of a physical human following, but we're now just like, God, how can I love people? How can I serve people? How can I please your heart? You know, and like,
man, as you're talking, I'm thinking about our team at Worship Circle, and literally the Holy Spirit put John's words in my mouth. He must increase, I must decrease.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm drawn to and I love about you, about Kim, about Paul, there's these worship leaders who are amazing, God's anointed, touched, but they're all, as all of us and you guys continue to move on this journey, it's just like Jesus keeps getting bigger. The coaches, that's what we're looking for, and that's what we're preaching, and you're just echoing that thing. It's like we're designed to decrease in his light
Yeah.
and for him to be everything.
Yeah.
And
But, I think that sometimes when people hear that, they might attribute that to like, well, that's a bummer, or that's like a negative thing. But there's nothing more satisfying than living your life for something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And finding that lane where you just go, I'm just running as God has given me as He just laid it out before me, and this is not about me, and there's no greater joy.
Yeah.
And I want to live a life worthy of the calling that I received. And I think in that, it's never about me, but yet I receive so much. It's the greatest joy just to get to partner with God in the advancement of His kingdom, on the earth.
Well, part of it too, it's a good thing, and it brings glory to God to encourage each other and to call out God and His hand and His fingerprint. And one of the things of God I see in you is the pipes that He gave you. I was like, I wanted to ask you, like, where in the world did that come from? Did your parents and...
I don't know. I mean, my mom sang growing up, and I listened to her sing all the time. She has a beautiful voice. Sometimes I wonder... my parents tell me that I had colic when I was a baby, and I screamed for the first month of my life. So I don't know if I developed something in those early days.
Yeah.
I've always projected. I've always been loud.
You're a powerhouse.
But I try not to scare people. I was scared of my own voice for quite a while.
Yeah.
I was afraid to let it completely out until I started working with a friend of mine, Diane Sheets. She's a vocal coach, and she's incredible. But she pointed it out. She's like, I think you're afraid of your voice. She's like, not only your singing voice, but also the things that God is unlocking in you that He's revealed to you that you're supposed to speak out about. And I was like, maybe you're right. Okay, I think you're right. But that was a massive, that marked me for sure. And it changed the way that I sing, and it changed the way that I just not afraid to say things I feel like God puts on my heart to say. So
you lock in. I remember when we did the hymns project, we're all in that circle, and you're like spot on, just locking in, laying it down. I'm like, oh my gosh, so good.
Thanks, Todd.
I mean, everybody did their thing, but just you're a gift. That's what I'll say. All right, we talked briefly about Worship Circle at the top, but just you've been leading these girls for a few years now. Small group. What would you say to any women watching that lead worship, and women and leaders? What would you say just about the journey you've been on with that and what you've seen God do in the lives of these women, just being able to connect and take their masks off?
I would just say that having the opportunity to get to know so many women who are, they're in the trenches. A lot of them are single. A lot of them are just, starting out, and they're working at churches. Many of them are married or have kids, and they're navigating family and ministry. And it has been the joy of my life just to hear their stories and to get to know them and to see what God is doing in them. And the truth is, I've never heard virtually any of them sing, because it's not even about that.
Yeah.
It's like we have this community and this family. It's just like, this is our sisterhood. It's like the worship circle sisterhood,
Yeah.
I mean, you have the guys and stuff, but I'm just saying from my perspective, it's so tight knit.
Yeah.
And especially when we get to actually meet in person at Rest.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's nothing better. This past Rest retreat, I just fell in love with my girls all over again, just getting to have dinner with them and hang out with them and see them in person. And it's like, wow, you're taller than I thought you were. But it's incredible. It's such an honor, and I just love how God knits our hearts together so quickly. So that we can encourage one another and spur one another on and challenge one another and pray for one another. And it's so incredible.
Well, thank you for your yes to God in this season. And
for sure.
it's nuts because we literally your girls are keeping in touch with each other.
Yep, they are.
And it's crazy. It's just the kingdoms coming together.
That's right.
So thank you for that and for Rest Retreat. And we're hoping to have Rest Retreat.
Yes, in Jesus' name.
We're going to put the name down. I mean, the date down, and hopefully we'll get there. But you guys stay tuned for that. And summit coming up. We always have a summit twice a year online. So pay attention to that. You can sign up at worshipcircle.com/summit to check that out. But on behalf of Meredith and myself, thank you guys for watching and for tuning into this podcast. And we love all of you listening. And we do want you to remember that God sees you and that he has not left you in the midst of even what seems like the most crazy suffering you might be in right now. And he actually uses those seasons that are hard to produce endurance and produce character, and that produces hope.
Yeah.
And there's no other way he uses it. There's no shortcuts. So we would say, as your brother and sister, hang in there. God sees you. You're loved and not alone. We're with you. And there's a honking whole lot of people you can't see who have gone before you, who are cheering you on. So don't give up.
So good.
And we love you.